Good morning, Starshines. My name is DH, my pronouns are they, them, and I play cozy games. And I knit and crochet and do a bit of bullet journaling, and some other stuff too. Every Monday evening on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/thecozydh, is our weekly Crafty Chat. Bring your project, bring something to stay hydrated with, but most importantly, just bring yourself. Each week, I'll post highlights from the stream, any tips I give, or just show off what I'm working on. To see more and join the conversation, follow me on Twitch to know when Crafty Chat goes live, and then join us. I can't wait to see ya. Last week we did a full whip confessional. I pulled out every single one of my whips, all 13 of them, and went through them on stream with you guys and kind of told you where I was at with each of them, what still needed to be done, how I was feeling about them, the patterns, all that good stuff. It was actually a lot of fun. I didn't do any actual knitting on stream last week. I just did 2 hours of talking about my whips, which was great. So one of the projects that I pulled out is this, which I actually started last August, because I wanted to have them ready for spooky season, which obviously didn't happen for last spooky season. But I pulled them out and I talked about them and I was looking at them and I was like, you know what? I really love this project, and it's too bad that it's just sitting in a closet. So, I had done this much of the first sock. The first sock is now mostly finished. I say mostly because there's a few details. So, I had done. So this is the first sock. I had done the jaws, the join here, and I think, around here. On the leg, maybe here. I wasn't very far. So I finished the leg. I did an afterthought heel, which is actually a bullet heel. So if I had done this in stripes, the stripes would kind of circle the heel. I did the foot, I did the toe, I bound off. So I finished this sock in 3 days after I picked it back up, which is ridiculously fast for me. They are DK weight socks on 3.25 millimeter needles. And once I switched from the circular needles to the DPNs, they started going just so fast. So I say that it's almost finished because I know it looks like a completed sock and it fits okay. But the foot is a bit too short. You can kind of see here, it looks too short. So I'm going to just snip the toe, pull back the toe, add 9 rows of length, redo the toe, and then over here, he is missing some lovely bright red gums and some teeth. So that I'm going to do a few tests because I'm honestly not sure exactly how I want to do it. So I'm gonna do some tests because I'm not sure exactly how I want to do this. So this pattern, I did use an established pattern kind of as the inspiration of the base, but I'm going wildly off script making them sandworms. So what I want to do is I want to do a red lip around here and then teeth coming out of the lip. So I'm thinking surface crochet, and then for the teeth doing a crochet picot. But I want to test it first. So I'm gonna make a swatch in the blue and then test some different techniques for doing the red and the teeth. Because I don't want to test it on the actual sock itself because that'll stretch out the stitches and leave little fuzzies, and I want to make sure I know what the technique is before I do the final sock. So this is the plan. So I'm gonna finish this boy, which shouldn't take me too long. And then I'm gonna redo the toe on here, and then I'm going to play around and figure out how I want to do the lips and the teeth. And I have an extra dilemma because the teeth for this inner jaw are white, but the teeth for this outer jaw are striped black and white. And I don't know if I can do that cleanly enough to be happy with it. Like, just at this scale. So I might just give him white teeth on both jaws. I don't know. I've got to play with it. I've got to just do some tests and that kind of thing. But I want these to look pretty cool. But luckily, the actual body of the sock is quite straightforward now. Especially now that I'm doing it on DPNs. These are 3.25 millimeter DPNs. I don't usually like... These are also the 7-inch size. I believe that's 7 or 8 inch. And wood DPNs, and those are not my favorite. I prefer 6-inch metal DPNs, but this is what I had, so this is what I'm using. It was either this or circulars, and I was going so slow on the circulars, I just had to switch it up. This is a set of 5 DPNs. I'm currently working with 4. Because sometimes when you're setting them up in the round like this, you need 3, but sometimes people do 4 just for comfort. I'm not one of those people. The 5th DPN in this set has been chewed on by a cat, so this needle tip is like all raggedy and it catches on the yarn and everything like that. So I'm just doing 12 row stripes. And then I switch colors when I get to this point. So what I do is I do 6 rows of white, and then I put in some waste yarn, and then I do 6 rows of white. So this black doesn't exist. So I just basically do a tube with a toe on it, and then I go back, I pull out the waste yarn, so I've got live stitches around here, put the live stitches on needles, and then I work the heel after that. It's a very handy technique, especially if you don't like doing short rows. I could get better at short rows, so I do them without leaving so much of a hole, but I don't really care enough to improve my short rows. My short row heels. This method works a lot better for me because the heel is shaped with decreases instead of with short rows. It's just a lot easier and neater, and there's fewer holes, and it fits really nicely because you also add a little bit more depth to the heel. But the afterthought heel, short row heel kind of construction that doesn't have a gusset on it, that fits Toot's foot better than a heel flap and gusset construction, which is what fits my foot better. So I'll switch it up depending on who I'm making the socks for. I think most sock knitters that you'll meet, and some people never knit socks. Some knitters have been knitting for years and years and years and decades and just don't knit socks. That's just not a thing that they knit, and that's fine. Some people don't knit sweaters. I don't knit scarves. It's just a matter of preference. But most sock knitters will have their own recipe for kind of a standard, what we call a vanilla sock. Their go-to, this is what fits me, this is what I like making, and I can do this in my sleep type sock. My default are very, very kind of old school. 64 stitches. Top cuff down. So I start with all 64 stitches on the needle. I do 12 rounds of 2x2 rib. I always do 12 rounds because if I don't do 12 rounds, I'll do like 3 rounds and go, that's an inch. So I make myself do 12 rounds because you can't fudge on 12 rounds. And then I do about 6 inches of stockinette, heel flap and gusset. slip stitch heel. For me, 5.5 inches of foot, and then a wedge toe. That's it. I think in my next pair, though, I am going to try out the Afterthought bullseye heel, because that might be a good fit for me as well. There are dozens of sock heel constructions. I mean, the joke is that there's thousands, but there's a lot. I forgot to do the decrease. Some of them have very silly names. One of the most common sock heel constructions is the fish lips kiss heel. So named, I guess, because the way that you do the short rows, it kind of looks like a fishy kiss. I was getting a ton of tangling issues with these socks because, sorry, I am working them in stripes. I'm not cutting the yarn between stripes. I'm just carrying it down. But that means that not only do I have 2 colors attached, I'm holding the yarn double. As you can see. So I've actually got 4 balls of yarn attached to this sock at any given moment. I have each color in its own Ziploc bag. And you can zip the zip almost all the way. If you're kind of like sitting this in front of you, you can even thread the yarn like one through each side like this, and then just press the zipper closed between them to kind of keep them even further apart. But this is like tossed in a bag, so it keeps drifting. So I did that, so they can't tangle between the threads. They can just tangle around the threads, if that makes sense. It has reduced my tangling. This yarn I'm using, the reason I'm holding it double is I originally picked it up because it's billed as a fingering weight yarn. It's Loops and Threads Woolite. It's 100% acrylic yarn. You can find it at McDonald's. Did you know you can find this yarn at McDonald's? McDonald's has yarn now. No, you can find this at Michael's. It's their house brand, Loops and Threads. So yeah, it's a fingering weight yarn. It's supposed to be sock weight. It's a light fingering. It's so skinny. On its own, one of these threads, like it's looking a little bit fluffy. It's got a little bit of a halo, but it's so thin that unless I dropped to a size of needle that I honestly don't own, there's no way I could have gotten a sock gauge. Like, I couldn't have gotten the stitches tight enough to make a fabric tight enough for a pair of socks. Which I didn't realize when I bought it. So I had already bought the yarn. Because it's cheap and it comes in the colors I needed. It comes in this light blue, black, white, and the dark red. What more do you need? I think there's only like 3 or 4 other colors that this yarn comes in. So it was kind of perfect. So I did some experimenting, and holding it double on a 3mm or a 3.25mm gave me the sock weight that I wanted. So it's slightly thicker than fingering weight, slightly thinner than a DK. It's probably somewhere around like a heavy sport. What are yarn weights anyways? But this yarn is so soft. It is such a joy to work with. They are going to be such comfy socks. I got the idea from Emma Bermudez, who is a designer. who does animal socks, very goofy animal socks. I'm sure you've seen them. Uh, there are a ton of like Chinese resellers who have made knockoff socks, knockoff like commercial versions of them. And she has a pair of snake socks called, and the pattern name is Hiss, with 3 S's. So that was like the idea. So the first time I cast them on, I did them according to the pattern, and I didn't like how it happened, how it turned out. And then I was doing the Steven West MCAL at the same time, and there was a lot of I-cord involved in that. So I got the idea to do an I-cord for the lips, and then pick up the stitches and do the jaws and the short rows, which is great. It turned out great. I really love the way it looks. I love the effect. It was super easy. However, I figured that out in like December, January, somewhere around there. I did all 4 jaws on this sock. So I did this guy, and then I did up to here, and then I stopped working on the sock. So this was all finished. Did I take any notes on how I did it? No. Not a single note. I didn't have a stitch count. I didn't have a technique written down. I remembered that I did the I-cord and the pickup and then the short rows. I left myself no notes. My hubris that I was going to do the second sock right away. So I finished the first sock last week. I finished it really quickly. And then I didn't work on these for a few days because I needed to figure out how I made the first one. I needed to reverse engineer it, and I just didn't have the brains. Like, it was a lot of thinking, and I was not equipped at the time to do a lot of thinking. But as you can see, I figured it out, and we're rolling. I am considering writing up the pattern and providing it for other people who might want to do it. Just because I have changed it so wildly from the initial pattern. And their DK weight and the whole technique for the jaws are different. But this whole project has been very fun. I like doing fandom knits when you're trying to recreate something from a show or something in homage to. I mean, I've got my Chucky sweater on the needles. I've got my DJ Music Man sweater. I almost did a Mon Calamari fisherman sweater from Mandalorian. I talked myself out of that one at the last minute. And yes, I want to do the like V-neck cardigan from Phasmo. So I am in the market for some new DPNs. Since I am using them so much more. I would like to have smaller sizes not in wood. I'll show you guys in a little bit why the wood DPNs get harder to use the smaller they get. But I'm sure you can see the tensile strength of wood when it's 2 millimeters thick. It's not high. It's not high. So I definitely want to replace my wood needles with metal. I'm looking at the Knit Pro Basics, which are very cheap, which is great. They're very cheap. They're a little bit hard to come by, but I can order them from Wool Warehouse for not very much. But in my heart of hearts, what I really want is more zings. Zings are my favorite DPNs. So I might save my pennies and get some zings further on down the road. Just deal with what I have now. And get some zings instead. So these are some of my zings that I have. I thought I grabbed 3 different sizes, but I didn't. So they're 6 inches. They are printed with the needle size. This is a US 7 4.5 millimeter. They are a little bit blunt. You can kind of see the tip is a little bit squared off instead of pointy, which is fine for my knitting style. I like it. I like them a little bit more blunt than stabby, especially because I tend to push the needle with my thumb while I'm knitting. But what I really like about the zings, in addition, they're really nice to work with. This is a 3.5 millimeter. Every size is a different color. So even if the text rubbed off, or if you had to put your readers on and you couldn't read the text, you can see what needles belong to what set very easily, which is great because I kind of have all of my DPNs just yeeted in a glass jar right now. I'm probably going to move them into my needle case just because the scraping sound of metal on glass is not so fun when I pull them out of the jar and when I rattle around in the jar. But yeah, I love these needles. They're the Knit. So Knit Pro and Knitter's Pride and Knit Picks, it's all the same brand. It just depends where it's being sold. These are Takumi, I believe is the brand. I got them for super cheap from like Wish or AliExpress, something like that. They're very cheap. They do have the size printed on them incredibly small, and it's already worn off. Like there's no way you'll be able to see that. Yeah, there's no way. But they work for what I'm using them for, which is all I can really ask. And I didn't want to make these hibernate while I waited for better needles. We went through all 13 of my whips last Monday. I've cast on 2 new things since then. Don't judge me, I had a rough week. Actually, judge me all you like, because I shouldn't have cast on 2 things, but I did. So I'm going to show them to you now, in the interests of full transparency, because like I had my Sandworm socks that like I flew through, and I'm like, I'm gonna finish these really quickly, but then I had to stop and think about them, and I wanted something cute. I don't have to justify myself to you, it's my stream. So the first project that I have, I stopped in the middle of a row for some reason. But this is the Kalani blouse. Not a big fan of the word blouse, but that's what the pattern is called. It's looking pretty crumpled right now because I stopped in the middle of a row, so I can't really show you the full thing. Anyways, it's like a V-neck raglan. It's in this beautiful Irish moss stitch texture, which is just a joy to knit. And then it's got some really nice raglan detailing here. It is really soft. So this yarn is Karen Big Cakes in the color Summer Berry Tart. Karen Big Cakes is one of my favorite yarns to work with. It feels really good. It's like a round, plump yarn. It's acrylic. It's soft, but it isn't like splitty. Anyways, so I started this. It's a really simple pattern. Totally mindless, and and it's been great just as something to work on. I am going to be putting it aside for a little bit and focusing on the Sandworm socks and then the Chucky Raglan. But because this is a self-striping yarn, all the color changes I don't need to worry about. It's just straight knitting. And it's going to have this lovely kind of deep V-neck. And I-cord, like I'm going to pick up for an I-cord collar and do I-cord cuffs and hem? Cuffs and hem? Is that the word I'm looking for? Anyways, it's a detail I just really like, the I-cord stuff. So I cast that on, and I've actually done quite a bit because it's been good to like zone out for. And then I just really wanted to cast on some socks, so I did. I didn't get very far on them because I cast on the cuff and then I basically didn't do anything else. I don't know how much I'm going to get done on these. Because as you know, I've got 4 pairs of socks on the needles now. And I do want to finish my chicken scratch socks before I get before I kind of totally get distracted by these. But they're just a vanilla sock. My usual formula. I did the cuff in the Gentry Gray from Patton's Croy. And then this blue-green beautiful yarn. I was feeling the bug to work with one of my hand-dyed yarns, which this is the only one I have left, really. I have one more that I dyed myself, which doesn't seem as fun. But I was really feeling the hand-dyed bug. So I'm working on these. This is Indigo Dragonfly is the name of the dyer. They're actually fairly local to us. They're in Ontario. I bought this yarn, God, like 15, 16 years ago, like a long time ago. Well, maybe not that long. Actually, yeah, maybe that long. Maybe that long. And the name of the color is Sesame Street Walker, which is just a fantastic name for a color. And it's these beautiful, like, blues and murky greens. And yeah, I love it. So this is just a plain vanilla sock. This will probably be my out and about knitting project. And I probably won't touch it other than that because it's not a very high priority. I just really wanted to cast on a hand-dyed sock. So I did, because it's my knitting and I can do what I want. That being said, I want to finish some other stuff. Oh, yes, like I was saying, so this is, as you can see, these are wooden needles. This is a 2.25. I believe it's also Takumi. And you can see, I'm not going to put too much pressure on it because I don't want to snap it. But, she bendy. She very bendy. But you can see, so that was a 2.25 millimeter needle. This is a 3.25 millimeter needle. So a millimeter difference in diameter. And that's what the measurements are. It's the diameter. So just a millimeter difference. And these look thicker and like they're not very bendy at all. Like I'm having to put significant pressure on them to get them to bend at all. I cleared out my closet the other day. I don't know if I mentioned this on stream last week, but I went through my entire closet, pulled out everything that doesn't fit, that's all worn out, and there were a couple of t-shirts that, you always have those t-shirts that they don't fit, but you don't want to get rid of them because they're like sentimental. And I'm usually pretty good at giving those away. But there's one, it's a Figrin Dan and the Cantina Band t-shirt, and it's done up like a band poster, but Figrin Dan is it's the band from the Cantina in Star Wars. So it's just it's extra nerdy, but it's like niche nerdy, like super nerdy. I love it. But I can't wear it anymore, unfortunately. So I held on to it. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll make a pillow out of it, because the poster is nice and rectangular. It'd be pretty easy to cut down and make a poster. I wouldn't have to do much measuring. Not a poster. Make a pillow out of it. And then Toot found on TikTok, someone had like a little tutorial on taking those old t-shirts and then sewing them onto the back of a hoodie. So you find a hoodie that fits you, and then you basically use the t-shirt as a giant patch. And I love that idea, because I think that would look really cool with the Figrin Dan. But now I want to get a couple of like patches for the arms of the sweater. And there's another t-shirt. There was another Star Wars t-shirt that I put into the donate bag that I might fish out and add to this eventual Star Wars sweater. So I'm not going to do the pillow. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to like add a few different things and make it like just a really cool, comfy sweater. I'm going to do a zip hoodie. I can get one fairly cheap on Amazon, but I might go looking when we go to the mall for more clothes, and that way I can get one that I know is going to fit really well. What was I saying? Yes, ever since I made the Superstar Daycare toque and used a patch that I had gotten from Etsy on that, I really love the look of that, and I kind of want to do it again. But yes, I kind of like the idea of simple knits with like a cool fandom patch, or doing the commercial hoodie with the t-shirt and the patches, and just kind of putting something together that way. It is quite a 90s look, but I like it because I am 90s. If I was going like really 90s, I would sew it down, sew the t-shirt patch down, but leave the edges like raw and then fray them a little bit. Don't tuck them under and do an overcast stitch or anything. But it's really nice to go through and figure out like what I have and what I don't have, especially what I want to buy, what I want to make for myself. Because I've got the Chucky pullover on the needles, which is going to be kind of like, it's not light, but it's not super heavy. It's just kind of a medium weight pullover that I think would just look nice with like jeans or something. The Rosenlund top that I'm working on is going to be a beautiful sweater vest. And I don't have any. I have one sweater vest left. I thought I had more. I do not. But I look good. No, I like the white button down with like a sweater or a sweater vest over it look for myself. I think it's flattering. I like it. I look spiffy. I might play with like the K-pop slip over and white t-shirt look. I don't know. Don't know if I can pull that one off. So I also, while I was casting on new projects, doing reorganizing crafty things, I moved my Halloween socks to DPNs. I have one set of metal DPNs in sock sizes and two sets of wooden. So my chicken scratcher on the metal, the sock I just showed you is on one of the woodens, and Halanine sock is now on the other. So probably after I finish the Sandworm socks, those socks will move into that kind of slot in the forefront of my brain. And they should be another fairly quick finish because they are so vanilla now. The leg on these boys is about 18 inches long. And I think I'm at 14 inches for the Halanine sock. They are knee highs, obviously. A standard sock length. For leg, it's about 6 inches. 6 inch for like the regular crew socks. And then people usually do 2 inches or even 1.5 inches for ankle socks. I do about 2 inches for ankle socks. I do 20 rows of ribbing and then move right into my heel. So you can see that my yarn kind of like as I'm turning, it's getting caught on the other needles and that kind of thing. That's one of the reasons that I like using the shorter lengths. 6 inch and 8 inch are, no, 6 inch and 7 inch? 15 centimeters and 20 centimeters, whatever that works out to, are kind of like the standard DPN lengths. And I just find these slightly too long to be comfortable. Like even holding them in my hand, they're slightly too big. And again, it's one of those things where you wouldn't think that like a little bit of an inch or two would make that big of a difference in terms of comfort, but it really does. And everyone has their own method of working with DPNs. You can see I keep these two kind of within my thumbs like this, instead of working like this or working like that. I keep them kind of tucked up there. It keeps them out of the way and it keeps stuff from hooking on them. So DPNs might look a little bit difficult to work with at first because it's like knitting with a hedgehog. You are dealing with 4 needles at a time, but you're not really. You're working with 2 needles at a time, and the other 2 are just holding on to stitches until you get there. Like you can see, I'm working with these 2 needles here. And these 2 needles are just holding the stitches. So I just kind of like tuck them in there. They're out of the way. They're not poking me. They're not doing any damage. And you do kind of have to readjust and turn it every like third of the stitches. But I find that less annoying than with Magic Loop, where you're readjusting halfway through the round instead of a third of the way through the round. You're only adjusting once per round instead of twice. Anyways, 1 less needle. But the actual like time period of adjusting, like pulling the needle through and getting the stitches back onto the needle off of the cable, I just find DPNs are a lot faster because you're not kind of fighting with the join and moving things around quite so dramatically. I don't think I would want to try doing a sweater on DPNs. I know that it's doable. You can get giant DPNs because that's how sweaters used to be made in the round. Before the like circular needles were invented. You can see the old Shetland knitters had DPNs, so double pointed needles like this, but they were like 2 feet long, and you'd have the entire sweater hanging off of them. And they were kind of scary. They looked very intimidating. And those were usually used with the belt knitting technique. So they would take this pointy end, which would be quite pointy, and they would be wearing a belt, like a thick leather belt, and then with like little notches on it. And then they would stick the needle into the notch on the belt, and that would hold the needle secure while they worked with it up here. And it would help redistribute the weight of the knitted work, so it's not all resting on your hands. A lot of it is resting then on your waist, which makes a lot of sense when you're knitting like large, heavy garments. Because if you've ever knit or crocheted a blanket and you kind of get to the halfway point, and that's a lot. I started to keep kind of track of what I'm working on day to day. I actually got this idea from Moon. She cross stitches, as you might be aware if you've seen her posts about her latest project in the Discord, or if you follow her on Twitch as well. She shows off her cross stitching prowess. We're very happy that we got Moon hooked on cross stitch. But Moon started tracking how many stitches she does every day, which I thought was a great idea. I started doing that too. And then, of course, I can't just work on cross stitch because you know me. That's impossible. So I started just keeping a little log of what I was knitting during the day as well, and kind of like what I got accomplished. Which has been nice because I can kind of see like where my time is going and if I'm hyper focusing on something. So I made a little Notion spread for it, and it links back to the project pages in Notion. So it's nice to see like, oh, I got a lot done that day. Oh, I didn't get very much done that day. But, you know, I still got a little bit done, and that's good. Am I ahead of schedule and stuff? Am I behind? So I think, because these socks I want to get done by Halloween, I think I'm going to get there. Moon's housewarming gift, second week of October, let's say. First week of October. First week of October, and that gives me a little bit of a buffer to get it in the mail. Gonna get that done. I've got 2 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks there. The Halloween socks might not get done for this spooky season. They might, but they will probably get done shortly after Halloween, if not before. And then there's Chucky sweater, which may or may not get done before Halloween. That's it for the video. If you like the content, please like the video. Subscribe for more cozy gaming and crafting highlights. If you want to see more, join the community on twitch.tv/thecozydh or check out our Discord. Thanks for watching, and keep twinkling below, Starshine.